The reign of the Supermen. Is it an awesome conclusion to the death of Superman? Is it worth getting? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler-free review for The Reign of the Supermen. I just got back from the Fathom Events thing where they played the double feature, The Death of Superman and The Reign of the Supermen, back to back on the big screen. I have to say, I enjoyed The Death of the Superman. I enjoyed The Death of Superman way better on the big screen. It was awesome to see it up there, and to get this complete story back to back really made it even more epic, because you really see how it is just one complete awesome Superman story. So just to sum it all up for you real quick, I'm giving this an A-. I definitely liked The Death of Superman better. I gave that one an A in my review of that. This one I still liked, maybe just not quite as much, but I'm still giving it an A-, still in the A range, because it is a very worthy conclusion. It is a very worthy follow-up, and it's a great inclusion into this series of new 52 DC animated movies that are all just so incredibly good. So this one ranks high up there for me, and I had a great time watching it. It definitely has its positives, and it definitely has its negatives. So you heard I walked out of there completely entertained, loved it, and I do fully recommend you see it. So I guess just to touch on some of the negatives I had with it, and most of them are just kind of small, they're kind of nitpicky. But for instance, like The Death of Superman is pretty emotional, and the way they tie in the Justice League to it, it's not like the Justice League has a big role because it's a Superman movie and it's a Superman focused movie. But they tied them in just enough so that you had these emotional ties, and there was a little bit less of that in The Reign of the Supermen. Now this one is really a Superman story, and the focus is the 4 Supermen that rise up in the absence of Kal-El, the last son of Krypton. I mean, you got the Eradicator Superman, you got Cyborg Superman, Superboy, the genetic clone, and then lastly, Steel. And so, like, the focus is really these Supermen, which takes a lot of focus away from the Justice League, which, on the one hand, is fine because it's a Superman story, and that's where we want our focus to be, is to be on Superman. But The Reign of the Supermen picks up 6 months after Superman's death, 6 months after the creature Doomsday arrives in the city and Superman battles that thing to the death. And there's a quick scene where Wonder Woman does mention that the Justice League has been stretched thin over the last 6 months, but you know, you don't really see a lot of that. You don't see like a montage of 6 months of what has happened in the world, and why the Justice League is stretched thin. But it is a pretty interesting line that talks about the League didn't even realize how much they leaned on Superman, kind of like the rest of the world now that he's gone. And so it would have been more interesting to get examples of that and to see a few things with that. And then the Justice League kind of had a different storyline where they get taken out of the equation altogether, and I don't want to dive into spoilers about that at all, and there are aspects of that that were interesting. We just didn't spend a lot of time with it. And again, I get it. It's the trade-off. This is a Superman-centered story. We want the 4 Supermen. We want to dive into the storyline with those guys, and we want to bring back Kal-El. Spoilers, I guess. Superman's not dead. But anyway, so we want to dive into that, and we want that to be the main thing. So I get why they did what they did and why the Justice League kind of had the smaller part, but at the same time, it's a little bit negative because it's like you want to see more of the world impact now that Superman is dead. How has this impacted the Justice League? And you want to get into more of that. And so I feel a little bit gypped in that we didn't really get it. I understand why we didn't get it, and it does work, but there's just that part of me that wanted maybe just a fraction of an inch more or something. But otherwise, a lot of great moments. Lois Lane was a super strong character in this movie, and they do a really good job in this movie of showing you why she is a woman worthy of Superman. I mean, they make her character so strong, and she does such a great job in this film, so her character is really awesome. And what's really funny is some scenes between her and Wonder Woman. So they have a lot of fun with that, and they kind of bring that relationship in there a little bit. So they definitely do have some really cool little Justice League moments sprinkled in there. Rainn Wilson. It's hard to not hear Dwight Schrute when I'm listening to that guy voice Lex Luthor.
What is my perfect crime?
But he does a really good job voicing Lex Luthor. And so Lex Luthor had a very interesting character arc in this movie, especially since it's, you know, LexCorp that is responsible for Superboy, the clone of Superman, and his desperation to be the spotlight, his desperation for this Superman to be the branded Superman. LexCorp owns Superman, and as long as there's a LexCorp, Superman lives. And so in his desperation, as the movie kind of, you know, goes through the storyline and the need for the real Superman begins to become apparent.
You really think Superman is alive?
I really feel like it's possible.
For the first time, I hope he is.
It's kind of interesting what they do with his character. So there's a lot of interesting things involving Lex Luthor and involving Lex Luthor and Lois Lane. So they did these Superman characters justice. They did a great job with Lex Luthor. They did a great job with Lois Lane. They did a great job diving into the 4 Supermen, I think. So, you know, they did a good job dividing up that time, getting into their characters and why they're there. The one that was the weakest, I would say, was the Eradicator Superman. There were a few things about his character where they explained his character, and I was like, oh, well, that makes sense, who he is and where he's come from and why suddenly he's here. But that doesn't explain why he's putting on a cape and flying over to Metropolis and fighting bad guys. Why is he doing that? And maybe I missed it. And if I did, let me know in the comments. But I just kind of felt like I kind of missed it, and so did my wife, Laura. So I was like, fascinating. Again, not that it's bad. It's a very minor thing. But anyway, all my little negatives with this movie are just that. They're little negatives, and they're very nitpicky. But when you take the death of Superman and this movie, The Reign of the Supermen, and you play them back to back, they are a fantastic Superman story. They really highlight the tragedy of Batman vs. Superman and Justice League. Because in Batman vs. Superman, there's a lot of things about that movie that I like. One of the things that I've always very firmly disliked is how they rushed to the death of Superman and then rushed through the death of Superman. When you watch the death of Superman and the reign of the Supermen back to back and you get the complete epic story and you just go, oh my gosh, had they had just taken their time and done interesting things with this in the live action realm and just taken the time to build to this, it's amazing probably what they could have done in storytelling. It's amazing what they could have done because this is an amazing story about Superman, and it shows the character Superman so much respect. So anyway, I'm a huge Superman fan, and I definitely loved both of these movies, The Death of Superman and The Reign of the Supermen. I'm giving Reign of the Supermen an A- because I think The Death of Superman is just a hair better, but as a whole, putting the whole thing together, it's incredibly good. It's a fantastic story. This is a really good conclusion, so if you're a fan of the DC animated universe, I think this is something that is definitely worthy to add to your collection. So if you got the chance to see The Reign of the Supermen, what were your thoughts? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian and hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next movie review, ranking video, or theological analysis, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.